was a quiet night when I got a call for a delivery. My name's Jake, and I'm a delivery driver. Most nights I stick to well-lit neighborhoods, but this time I received an order for an old, creepy house at the end of a dark road. People said it was haunted, but money was tight and I couldn't refuse. As I drove, the wind howled outside and the trees seemed to lean closer to the road. The house appeared in front of me, its windows dark and broken, almost like it was watching me. I parked my truck, grabbed the package, and walked up to the porch, feeling a chill creep up my spine. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. I thought about leaving the package and going back, but just as I turned, I heard it, a soft whisper, faint but clear. "Help me." I froze. My heart raced. Who was there? I turned slowly, scanning the shadows. The door creaked open a little more, and I saw a shape inside. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaky. Silence. Then the whisper came again, more urgent. "Please, help, Mum." I shouldn't have, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped inside, and the air was cold and musty. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I called out, "Is anyone here?" Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, panic rising in my chest. I rushed to the door, but it wouldn't open. I turned back, my heart pounding, and followed the whisper deeper into the house. "Help me," the voice echoed, drawing me closer. I reached a room at the end of the hall where a flickering light caught my eye. I peeked inside and saw a little girl standing there, her hair messy and her eyes wide with sadness. "I'm trapped," she said, pointing to a broken mirror on the wall. "You have to help me." I was scared, but I felt a strange connection. "How can I help?" "Break the mirror," she whispered urgently. "It's the only way." I grabbed a nearby chair, my hands trembling, and swung it at the mirror. The glass shattered, and a freezing wind rushed through the room. The girl's face lit up with relief, but then I saw it, a dark figure emerging from the mirror, its eyes glowing red. Fear took over, and I stumbled back. The girl screamed, "Run!" I dashed for the door, my heart racing. The figure was right behind me, reaching out with shadowy hands. I pushed against the door with all my strength, bursting through just as the figure closed in. I jumped into my truck, slamming the door behind me. I started the engine, glancing back at the house. The girl stood in the doorway waving goodbye, but the figure loomed behind her, eyes blazing with rage. I sped away, my heart pounding, promising myself I'd never make another late-night delivery. But even now, I can still hear her whisper in the wind, "Help me." I'm Alex, a delivery driver who often worked late hours. One night, I received a peculiar order. It was for a package destined for an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. I hesitated but needed the money, so I accepted it. As I drove, the streetlights flickered, casting long shadows. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and ominous. I parked my truck, feeling a shiver run down my spine. The air was thick with an eerie silence as I stepped out and grabbed the package. I approached the entrance, a heavy door that creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, it was pitch black. I switched on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating dust and old crates. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing. No response. I walked deeper into the warehouse, my footsteps echoing off the walls. The atmosphere felt heavy, like something was watching me. Suddenly, I heard a faint sound, like soft crying. My heart raced as I followed the noise, hoping to find someone in need of help. I turned a corner and spotted a small, dimly lit room. Inside, I saw a girl, no older than 10, sitting on the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Are you okay?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. "I'm lost," she whispered. "Please help me get out of here." I felt a surge of empathy. "Where are your parents?" They left me," she said, her voice trembling. "But I don't want to be here anymore. I just want to go home." I glanced around, uneasy. "Let's get you out of here." As I helped her stand, I noticed the room felt colder. A chill swept through the air, and I could see my breath. The girl looked past me, her eyes widening in fear. "It's here," she whispered. Before I could ask what she meant, I felt a dark presence fill the room. Shadows twisted and formed into a figure, its face obscured, but I could feel its rage. Panic surged through me. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing the girl's hand. We bolted toward the door, but the figure moved fast, blocking our path. I turned, looking for another way out. "Over there." The girl pointed to a window at the far end of the room. We dashed toward it, but the figure was closing in. My heart raced as I pulled the window open, struggling to lift it. "Come on," I urged her, helping her climb out first. Just as I was about to follow, the figure reached for me, cold fingers grazing my arm. I squeezed through the window, landing hard on the ground outside. I turned to see the girl staring back at the warehouse, her expression a mix of fear and relief. "We made it," I exclaimed. But just then, the figure loomed in the doorway, dark and menacing. It reached out, and I felt a cold breeze wash over me. "No," I yelled, pulling the girl away. We ran back to my truck, jumping inside and slamming the doors shut. I started the engine, glancing back one last time. The figure stood at the warehouse entrance, watching us with glowing eyes. As I drove away, I could still hear the girl's voice, faint and trembling. "Thank you for saving me." I looked over at her, but she had vanished. My heart sank as I realized I was alone. The chill in the air lingered, and I knew I would never forget that night or the darkness that still haunted the warehouse. Now, every time I make a late delivery, I can't shake the feeling that something is watching me, waiting for the next opportunity to reach out from the shadows. My name is Sam, and I work as a delivery driver. Most nights my route consists of familiar streets filled with bright lights and friendly faces. But one evening, everything changed. It was a typical Friday night when my dispatcher called me. "Sam, we have a special delivery. Are you up for it?" I hesitated. Special deliveries often led to strange places. "Where's it going?" I asked. "It's an old house on Ravenhill Road." The customer paid extra for a night delivery. "It's urgent." Ravenhill Road. I'd heard the stories. People said that old house was haunted. My stomach twisted at the thought, but I needed the money. I took a deep breath and accepted the job. As I drove, the wind howled through the trees and the streetlights flickered. Shadows danced across the road, making it hard to focus. Each passing moment felt heavier, as if the air itself was warning me to turn back. Finally, I reached the end of Ravenhill Road. The house stood tall and eerie, with broken windows and a sagging porch. The yard was wild, with weeds reaching for the sky. I parked my truck, my heart pounding in my chest. I grabbed the package, a small plain box wrapped in brown paper. No return address, just a name, Elena. I walked up to the front door, my nerves buzzing. As I knocked, the sound echoed into the night. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time, but still nothing. Just as I was about to set the package down and leave, I heard it, a soft voice behind me. "Help me." I spun around, scanning the dark yard, but there was no one there. The voice had been so faint, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. My heart raced. Should I go inside? Against my better judgment, I stepped into the house. The door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway. I switched on my flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. Dust motes danced in the light, and I could feel the cold air wrap around me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. The silence swallowed my words. I took a deep breath and moved further into the house. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, echoing in the stillness. The air felt heavy, like something was waiting for me. Then I heard it again, a faint cry. "Help me!" I followed the sound, moving deeper into the house. The hallway was lined with old pictures, their faces blurred and faded. I reached a room at the end, the door slightly ajar. The crying grew louder. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit by a flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the corner sat a little girl, no older than 8, her face streaked with tears. "Are you okay?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She looked up, her eyes wide and frightened. "I'm lost," she said. "Please help me." My heart ached for her. "Where are your parents?" "They left me," she whispered. "I don't want to be here anymore." "Okay, let's get you out of here," I said, trying to sound reassuring. But as I helped her stand, a chill swept through the room. I noticed a dark shadow creeping along the walls. The girl gasped, her eyes darting to the shadow. "It's here!" she cried. Before I could react, the darkness seemed to take form, coalescing into a figure that loomed in the doorway. My breath caught in my throat. It was tall and menacing, its features hidden in the shadows. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing the girl's hand. We bolted toward the door, but the figure moved quickly, blocking our path. "Over there!" She pointed to a window at the far end of the room. We dashed toward it, but the figure closed in, its presence suffocating. I struggled to lift the window, glancing back at the shadow. "Come on," I urged her, helping her through first. Just as I was about to follow, the figure reached out, its icy fingers brushing my arm. I squeezed through the window, landing hard on the ground outside. I turned to see the girl staring back at the warehouse, her expression a mix of fear and relief. "We made it," I exclaimed. But then the figure appeared at the window, dark and foreboding. It reached for us, and I felt a cold wind wash over me. "No!" I yelled, pulling the girl away as we sprinted toward my truck. We jumped inside, and I slammed the door, starting the engine. I glanced back at the house, heart racing. The figure stood in the window, watching us with glowing eyes. "Drive! Drive!" the girl shouted, her voice filled with panic. I pressed the gas pedal, speeding away from the house. The headlights cut through the darkness, but I could still feel the chill in the air, as if the shadow was following us. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know," she replied, tears in her eyes. "But it wants me back." I turned onto the main road, my hands gripping the steering wheel. "You're safe now. Just stay with me." After what felt like an eternity, we reached the edge of town. The girl sat silently beside me, her face pale and drawn. "Where do you live?" I asked, hoping to get her home safely. She hesitated. I don't remember." I frowned, glancing at her. "What do you mean? Do you have an address?" "No, it's all blurry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I don't want to go back there." A sense of dread settled in my stomach. I couldn't just leave her. "You can stay with me for now. I'll help you find your family." She nodded slowly, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I made my way to my small apartment, hoping to give her a safe place to rest. When we arrived, I led her inside and offered her a blanket. She wrapped it tightly around herself, sitting on the edge of my couch. I felt a mixture of concern and confusion. "Do you want some water?" I asked. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. I filled a glass and handed it to her. She drank slowly, her eyes darting around the room as if she were waiting for something to happen. "Do you have a name?" I asked gently. "Elena," she replied, finally looking at me. "I think my name is Elena." "Okay, Elena, we'll figure this out together," I promised. But as the night wore on, a sense of unease crept into my apartment. The air grew colder, and shadows seemed to move in the corners of my vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the room was plunged into darkness. I cursed under my breath and fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight. "Stay close," I told Elena. As I moved through the dark, I heard a whisper. "Help me." I froze. The voice sounded like the girl's, but it felt different, darker. I turned, and there she stood, her expression changed, eyes wide and glassy. "Elena?" I called, my heart racing. "What's happening?" "It's here," she said in a voice that didn't sound like her own. "It wants me back." I backed away slowly, trying to make sense of what was happening. The air felt thick, heavy with an unnatural presence. The whispering grew louder, surrounding us, a chorus of lost souls. "Leave her alone," I shouted into the darkness. The shadows twisted, forming the figure I had seen in the warehouse. It loomed larger, its face finally visible, twisted, anguished, and angry. I felt a wave of terror wash over me. "Come to me," it hissed, reaching out with long, dark fingers. "No," I yelled, stepping in front of Elena. "You can't have her." In that moment, I felt a surge of bravery. I couldn't let this thing take her. I remembered the stories I'd heard about the house, how the spirits of children trapped there could sometimes be saved. "Elena, listen to me," I said, trying to stay calm. "You have to fight it. Remember who you are." Her eyes flickered, battling the darkness. I don't want to go back," she cried. "Then stay with me," I shouted. feeling the power of my own determination. "You're not alone." The figure hesitated, its face twisting in rage. "You cannot protect her," it roared before lunging at us. I closed my eyes, feeling the fear wash away, replaced by a burning resolve. I couldn't let this thing take her. I envisioned light, pure, bright light pushing against the darkness. I opened my eyes and focused on the figure. "Leave her alone," I shouted, and to my surprise, a beam of light shot from my hand, hitting the dark figure. It shrieked, the sound piercing my ears. The shadows began to dissipate, swirling away like smoke. The girl blinked, confusion crossing her face, but she held onto my arm tightly. "Fight it, Elena," I urged. "You are stronger than this." The figure recoiled, the shadows writhing in anger. "You will regret this," it screeched before lunging at us again. I closed my eyes, feeling the fear wash away, replaced by a burning resolve. I couldn't let this thing take her. I envisioned light, pure, bright light pushing against the darkness. I opened my eyes and focused on the figure. "Leave her alone," I shouted, and to my surprise, a beam of light shot from my hand, hitting the dark figure. It shrieked, the sound piercing my ears. The shadows began to dissipate, swirling away like smoke. The girl blinked, confusion crossing her face, but she held onto my arm tightly. "Fight it, Elena," I urged. "You are stronger than this." The figure recoiled, the shadows writhing in anger. "You will regret this," it screeched, before lunging at us again. I felt a surge of energy. It was as if the room brightened, pushing back against the shadows. Elena looked up at me, her eyes beginning to clear. "Fight it, Elena," I urged. "You are stronger than this." The figure recoiled, the shadows writhing in anger. "You will regret this," it screeched, before lunging at us again. I felt a surge of energy. It was as if the room brightened, pushing back against the shadows. Elena looked up at me, her eyes beginning to clear. "Fight it, Elena," I urged. "You are stronger than this." The figure recoiled, the shadows writhing in anger. "You will regret this," it screeched, before lunging at us again. I felt a surge of energy. It was as if the room brightened, pushing back against the shadows. Elena looked up at me, her eyes beginning to clear. "Are you okay?" I asked. "We can do this together." The figure lunged again, but this time Elena stepped forward, determination etched on her face. "I won't let you take me," she yelled. In a flash, the room filled with a brilliant light. It erupted from her, pushing back the darkness and illuminating every corner. The figure screamed, the sound echoing through the room before it was consumed by the light, shattering into nothingness. As the silence settled in, I looked at Elena. She was shaking, but her eyes sparkled with life. "I did it," she whispered, a smile breaking through her tears. "Yes, you did. You were amazing," I exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. "You're free now." As we stepped outside, the sun was rising, casting a warm glow over Raven Hill. The house behind us no longer seemed ominous. It felt like a place of release, a chapter finally closed. With the darkness defeated, we returned to my truck, ready to leave the haunted past behind. "Where do you want to go now?" I asked Elena. "I want to find my family," she said, determination shining in her eyes. "Let's do it," I said, starting the engine. We drove away from Raven Hill, the weight of the night lifting with every mile. As we drove into the morning light, I couldn't help but smile. We had faced the darkness together, and together we would find the light. From that day on, I vowed to keep an eye on the night deliveries, knowing that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the most incredible discoveries. And sometimes all it takes is a little courage to break free from the shadows